So my name's Adam Barley, and gladly so. I love my name. And a little bit of my story. I've been immersed in dance movement practices for a long time now. I'm in my early 60s, and I fell into a I fell into a dream with Gabrielle Roth when I was about 25. Um, with her music and her book, and then I found her and I trained with her and just gave everything to being with her. I trained with her for 20 years. And that was amazing. No, it was an incredible time to be involved in the Five Rhythms, actually, in the 90s. It was when not many people had heard of it. When I first started teaching, it was like, I got invited to a few places around Europe, and it was like walking in virgin snow. No one had heard of the Five Rhythms, and there wasn't this sort of plethora of dance movement practices that is around now, where most big cities you can dance every night of the week these days. And I was going where no one had heard of anything like that, which was very exciting. And then it grew and grew, and I began to grow in my own way of working with the Five Rhythms, and then Gabrielle died in 2012, and that world continued to evolve, and I gradually began to find myself kind of diverging off. And in I never remember what it is, 2019, I think it was 2019, or was it 2018? Already so long ago that I don't remember the date. I had a kind of epiphany of seeing something in a pattern of numbers. Actually, I grew up as a mathematician and a scientist, and that's what I was into at school. I was going to do engineering at university. Didn't actually, did something else, but I've always had a love of numbers, and I had an insight into this very famous mathematical equation that connects together the four most fundamental numbers there are into this exquisitely elegant pattern that where they go kind of and equal zero. And I suddenly realized that what I was seeing in that equation was a pattern that I'd become very familiar with through working with Gabrielle, but it wasn't quite the same. At first I thought it was the same, then I realized it wasn't the same. There's something else about it. And I birthed Zero One. I created a movement practice which kind of carried through most of, all of, some of what I'd learned with Gabrielle. A thing as you work with something for a long time, like I did over decades. Things evolve and change in my perception, like naturally. And Zero One was a good place for me to go to evolve my work. And I did that for about 5 years. And then I got very seriously ill. In fact, I finished the first Zero One apprenticeship, and a month later got very ill. I got cancer, a highly aggressive form of lymphoma. I was in a state, and it was like, that was nearly 2 years ago. And I believe I'm out the other side now. I feel like I'm out the other side. I'm well again, and I'm delighted to be coming to One Dance Tribe again, where I've been many times. I'm really delighted to come back. But this last 2 years has been incredible kind of rite of passage and an encounter with dying. I very nearly died at one stage about a year ago, and with fear and pain and unbelievable depth of grief. I mean, really incredible to grieve that deeply. Like I didn't know how much I love my life and being alive and being here on earth. And it's been really hard, and as is the way of things that are really hard, it's been really good for me. I think I think I'm a better person for it. I know I'm a better person for it. It's the whole experience has shattered me in a very profound way. And I wouldn't have said I was someone who wasn't down to earth, but the last 2 years have got me more down to earth, definitely. Just the not traveling, because for 30 years I was on the road. I was on the road half the time. I was bringing up kids as well and I had a home life, but I was traveling a lot with my work. And it's been amazing to spend 2 years not working. I couldn't work. I had to give it up completely. And to just be at home and, go on the same walks day after day when I could walk. I had some times where I couldn't walk at all. Came out of hospital at one stage. I couldn't walk, like I had to have 24-hour care at home. That was really something. And learning to walk again, hanging on to my son's arm, walking up the lane for the first time, I will never forget. That was an experience. Amazing to be that debilitated, awful and amazing and sort of shocking and stopped me in my tracks. And I've been a very dynamic, full of life person, I think, most of my life. And to be stopped in my tracks was incredible. And I think perhaps it's worth telling this story in brief because it's really affected, of course, the way that I might approach teaching movement. I'm just beginning again. In fact, at the time of making this little recording, my wife and I, Maria Karen and I, we're just about to teach a weekend workshop together here in Stroud, which will be the first time I've worked in nearly 2 years. And it's a big deal for me. I loved my work and I love my work and I'm very curious to see what comes out of it. But I feel different and my practice has really changed. I've been through 2 years. Most of the time I couldn't dance, not like I used to. And so I've spent a lot of time where my dance was actually lying curled up on the sofa or the floor, barely moving, requiring everything I had to stay, just to stay here, to stay present. What an education, and how can I just stay with this level of distress? Physical pain off the charts, like really off the charts. And the amount of fear and grief, really. So I feel like I used every ounce of experience I had, and if you're relatively new to movement practice, I encourage you. There's good shit, good medicine for life to be able to get through hard times because you're practicing staying present with your body, with your feelings, with what's happening around you. And hopefully if you come to One Dance Tribe, there'll be some challenging points. And when you get to those challenging points, you get to practice staying through. And, I'm sure if you're watching this and, presumably you're human and you've presumably noticed it's not that easy. Often it's not that easy being here, being human, particularly at this time in history, I would guess. It's not easy. And the capacity to stay present and take action in a courageous way, which is not to deny the fear, but to feel it and move anyway. That's good stuff. And we're practicing that sometimes on the dance floor. I mean, hallelujah, we're also practicing celebration, pleasure, to enjoy just being alive and to dance and move and be with other people. Beautiful, beautiful. But I certainly drew on the more challenging aspects of movement practice when I was that ill. It took everything I had to stay, and I used everything I had, and I did stay, and I did pretty well, I think, staying with the feelings. The feelings are hard. If you've been through a crisis yourself in your life, or particularly serious illness, and you'll know it's like the feelings are hard to stay with. And I'm sure we'll be doing some of that at One Does Tribe, going through feelings and how to use your body and your movement to express and be with our feelings and not just think them. It's so easy to get stuck thinking about feelings. And on the dance floor, we have the opportunity to feel our feelings and be with our feelings and be alive with our feelings and allow whatever our feelings are to come through and enliven and inform and be even an offering to the world around us. There's an act of generosity that's possible with whatever we're feeling, including the so-called negative feelings, which in essence aren't really negative at all, I would say. Thank you for the question. I would say this experience has changed me so profoundly that it cannot but have changed my work as well. I mean, I don't really know yet because I haven't done anything yet. I have done a little bit, actually. I was invited to take part in an event that a group of my apprentices put on in Cyprus a month ago, and I showed up to just kind of hang out with them, but I did end up teaching a 1 hour session. So I have some idea, but I would say the experience of being that ill it's both humbled me and inspired me. And so I will bring that quality, I guess. And I would say really when you're facilitating this kind of experience of creative movement that we're about in One Dance Tribe, as a facilitator, my state of consciousness is more important than anything I say or music I choose. It's so much about our state of consciousness. And, that's why the theme of this year of rising in love, like bring it on. That's what we're about. And I would hope that I can bring a state of consciousness that is informed by the humbling that I've experienced, which has really softened me and deepened my compassion for state of being human or states of being human, but also inspired me. Like I'm really fervently wanting us to wake up and be the love that we really are. No, I would say we're three things in a sense. On a body level, we are alive. And that is sexual energy, basically. Streaming sexual aliveness, creative energy. That's what we are physically, like all living things. And then on a heart level, we are love. And on a mind level, we are awareness. And these things together, at our best, are magnificent. And I've been deepened by the experience of being that ill and that close to death. And that cannot but inform the way I work. As to the sort of mechanics of, different things I might say or different qualities of music I might use, or I don't know. We'll see. Come and see. You'll find out. But something I have shifted so much that the work must have shifted too. Yeah. And as a team, we're then modeling what we can all do together, and that it can be a co-creative event. Yes, the facilitators are focalizing sessions, and that we're kind of steering the whole thing, and it's a co-creation with everybody who shows up. And so that is love to me. That co-creativity and being together, that is loving. And I guess I have a kind of, like the word love or loving, I always want to hold a torch for the fierce edge of that that loving is not just nice. It's not just cozy. It's not just sweet. It's bittersweet, as we all know when we've loved. There's a bittersweet quality about the human heart and human loving that is beautiful and has a fierce edge. And I will inevitably bring that because that is kind of how I am. I'm fierce, and I would say, having been that ill, been through what I've been through, or generally as I've got older, I've got more steady in my fierceness, but more true to it. It's like, I am fierce, and because we're in deep shit as human beings, and we need to learn to love fiercely and rise in love, not just as nice new age flower powers, but as real. Hey, can I make a difference in the world with my loving? Can I cut some ice? Can I really step into difficult situations and stand for something? Can I speak up for what I believe in against injustice and for love and for the beautiful human innocence that we all carry in us? And so rising in love is it's a fine title for hard times. Well, I do know a bit about that because what's another thing that's great about One Dance Tribe is I get to be a participant more of the time than I'm being a facilitator, which is a delight. And I would say very personally that it's just great to be led, like as someone who spends a lot of time leading groups. I love being led, but I think we've all got something to learn by that glorious experience of being led in a way that is co-creative and not prescriptive, but where the facilitators are listening to the space and allowing something to unfold, and we get to be part of something together. That is really special. Like it's like a microcosm of the way that I believe we evolved to be as humans: co-creative, intimate, challenging, alive, and making art. Dancing. Yeah, like we're born to dance, and the fight for freedom and justice and all of that is worth it because we want the freedom so that we can dance. Like what finer way to be on earth than to dance? It's a glorious thing, and to be part of a process like One Dance Tribe is right at the heart of it. I'll just say, I look forward to seeing you there.